Hey, how are y'all doing today? We are Final 7, and we're here to do your executive debrief for our penetration test over Oui Croissant. My name is Grant. We have Nate, Lance, and of course, Landon. So before we get into the kind of details of our test, I want to talk a little bit about what we were trying to do. So first and foremost, one of our personal goals, right, is we're trying to test completely, so to speak, right? We want to test, find the most amount of vulnerabilities that exist, if they are there, find them completely, and make sure that we are kind of up to date with the most current technologies and exploits matching threat actors out there. And then as far as the report goes, right, the report is our kind of final product that we will pass on to y'all. And it's important for us to keep in mind, and for y'all, as you take it in, as you're directing your company kind of towards action about it, that the penetration test is one small cut of your current cybersecurity posture. There's a lot of things we can't know, things that your SOC teams, your infrastructure teams, they do know. So when we talk about certain things like remediation recommendations, always keep in mind that is also to be discussed, and the subject matter experts on how you're going to go about that is going to be your SOC teams.
Thank you, Grant. We're going to take a second and go over the overall security posture of Oui Croissant. We have determined that the overall security posture is at a critical state. Throughout our engagement, we have discovered 34 vulnerabilities throughout the infrastructure. Since our last report, 33% of our findings have been remediated, although we were still able to compromise the enterprise infrastructure. Business impact is a large part of, it's a very wide topic, and it's covered more deeply within our report, but there's a few key risks that I want to detail in this current moment. There's reputational damage that could occur to Oui Croissant. There's legal complications. There's possible business disruptions that could take place, and exposure of confidential information.
Thank you, Landon. Our risk assessment takes a hybrid approach to industry standard. We wanted to use this format in order to make a personalized experience for our findings when communicating to your company. We use common vulnerability scoring system to assess our technical impact, and we also use our NIST risk matrix in order to represent likelihood as well as business impact. The combination between these two scores helps us create a categorization that determines remediation and impact. Over this methodology, we apply to our scope. The scope contains 2 of your networks, production and development. These 2 networks contain both the Y web application as well as company infrastructure.
Thank you, Lance. So throughout our engagement, we identified 34 vulnerabilities. Using the mentioned methodology, we were able to categorize them into the following categories: 3 low, 9 medium, 11 high, and 11 critical. However, since our last engagement, we re-identified that 18 vulnerabilities still existed on the network, but we also identified 16 new vulnerabilities. However, we would like to focus on the critical section, as while our team did notice that several of the critical vulnerabilities previously mentioned in our last report were patched and remediated, we did identify 6 new critical findings that overall lower the security posture of the network.
Thank you, Landon. So some of the high points that we want to highlight that we found in the test. So during our reassessment, we noticed several improvements that Oui Croissant made to the overall environment based on our recommendations from our previous report. Those reassessment improvements are as follows. The improved database security. So there was proper authentication controls in place on the database to prevent improper access to sensitive company data. Also enhanced endpoint security, so antivirus was enabled on user workstations. and additionally enforce principle of least privilege. So that way users only have the permissions that they need to perform their day-to-day responsibilities, nothing more, nothing less. There's also some improvements that we saw in Oui Croissant's environment that we do not recommend. So we would just like to commend you guys for taking proactive security approaches. Those were automated PII tooling to help automatically redact any PII or potential credentials in the local file system, as well as AI resiliency and safety to help enforce user safety and prevent bias avoidance. So some of the key areas of improvement that Oui Croissant can make to the environment. So we categorized our 34 vulnerabilities using the MITRE CWE, Common Weakness Enumeration Framework, and we've picked out the top 3 CWEs in this context. So number 1 was improper isolation or compartmentalization, which is basically just a lack of network isolation. Also improper access controls. There was a lack of authentication and authorization controls across multiple areas within the environment. And lastly, exposure of sensitive information. We were able to access credentials and potentially sensitive files throughout the environment.
Thank you, Lennon. Throughout the evaluation, we kept a compiled list of recommended remediations that we think that you should consider as a company based off of the issues that we see within your network. So what we'll do is we'll start off first with authentication and authorization. We recommend that you centralize all authentication instead of being distributed in order to ensure that users have the permissions that they need and nothing more and nothing less. Next, we recommend you audit credential security and look into identity access management as well as credential management in order to ensure that passwords and users are well managed in the day and age of very difficult management, as well as for AI resiliency and safety. We recommend that you develop processes or programs within your company that help you audit the resiliency and compliance of your AI algorithms and look into new technologies like RAG. And a few key takeaways I'd like to leave you with as you look into those remediation issues. Be proactive. We recommend that you look into creating a secure software development lifecycle, which allows you at every single step of your company and of your product, you have security baked in. We also recommend that you look into industry standards by NIST, Microsoft, Mozilla. Basically, any large Fortune 500 company is going to have frameworks out there for you to use. Highly recommend that you use them. They're very, very useful. And then again, the human element in the chain of InfoSec is the weakest, unfortunately. And so we recommend good training for users on phishing, as well as training for the new tools we recommend you implement. That's all we have for the day. I'm going to pass it off to Grant for any questions.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. It was very good. Yeah, I'm intrigued by the number of recommendations around access, because that's kind of what we're sensing as well, right? Authentication authorization. The team has been thinking about looking at moving towards frictionless authentication. Would you guys say that's congruent with your recommendations?
I'll pass on Nate in just a second to talk about that, but in general, when it comes to users and security, if you make something too complicated, users don't like it, and they'll try to subvert it. So as a general rule, simplifying down your security practices, as long as you can do that without exposing something or compromising it, is always going to be generally positive, both from a pure security standpoint as well as just a company morale standpoint. Do you have anything to add to that? Here, just a little bit.
So we did notice within the company that y'all are moving towards time-based one-time pads, TOTPs, for very frictionless authentication. So you get a one-time code, you put it in, you log in. Great. The issue is that we realize that a lot of the systems that you built or use this TOTP system on top of were insecure by design, and that's what we were able to exploit. So I think it's great to move towards frictionless authentication, but we have to make sure that we build it on top of a secure baseline before we do that.
Okay, that's a good answer. And this question is especially for Landon. You guys, have you seen in terms of relative risk and threat rating, have you guys started looking at any of the quantitative models like OpenFair?
I think I'll pass that on to Landon.
Which Landon?
So yeah, could you repeat the quantitative models?
Yeah. Have you guys, when you're evaluating the things you're finding, have you started looking at any of the risk quantification models out there that are really quantitative, like OpenFair?
So I'm not personally experienced with OpenFair or that. So like we kind of mentioned, right now we do use NIST and CVSS. I'm not too sure, and I don't know if I have the expertise to speak on quantitative models like that, like OpenFair. I don't know. Does anyone else have experience?
All right, just curious.
Okay.
Yeah. Any questions, team?